Okay, so news and opinion time. You could even go as far as to say this is a reaction video. Bald guy reacts to... No, I'm not going to stoop that low, but the news is that Nyck de Vries has been dumped by the bosses at Red Bull to be replaced with Daniel Ricciardo starting, well, now. For the Red Bull operation, this isn't a new thing. In 2016, Danny Kvyat was dumped for Max Verstappen. Gasly was dumped for Albon. For the junior or feeder team, whatever you want to call it, this has happened a couple of times as well. When the team was Toro Rosso, Scott Speed was dropped for Sebastian Vettel. In 2009, Sebastian Bourdais was dropped for Jaime Alguersuari, and in 2017, the team ran 4 drivers over the course of the season: Gasly, Kvyat, Brendan Hartley, and Carlos Sainz. On that occasion, Sainz moved to Renault during the season. Gasly missed a round or two because of Super Formula, and then at the end of the season, Kvyat was released completely and replaced by Hartley. The lineups under the Alpha Tauri banner seem to be more stable, and this is the first time Red Bull has done Red Bull things under the Alpha Tauri name. As a result, it means that the career of the Honey Badger has come full circle. Kind of. He did do some races with the ill-fated HRT team before moving into a full-on career with Toro Rosso, and then got promoted to the Red Bull senior team in 2014, before leaving it in 2018. He departed for Renault, who were going to be paying him big money, so he was less Honey Badger and more Money Badger at the time. That's not me making up that moniker, others were calling him that. I mean, I wish I could take credit for the pun. While he did finish 5th in a 2020 season all over the place thanks to the thing that happened, his time since leaving Red Bull has been so-so. 9th in 2019, 8th in 2021, 11th in 2022, and now he's back in the worst performing team thus far. Now, some might jump to the conclusion that it's de Vries that's the problem. While Tsunoda has been on the verge of the top 10 and scored 2 10th place finishes, since then it looks like this year's Alpha Tauri has gone backwards. 14th and 18th at Canada, 19th and 17th at Austria, and 16th and 17th on Sunday at Silverstone. Alpha Tauri currently sits last in the standings on just 2 points, both of those points scored by Tsunoda. But the whole thing on the face of it just seems a little odd. There's this tweet that's been doing the rounds which a lot of people agree with. If somebody looked at Nyck de Vries for one 80-minute race last year, suddenly decided they really wanted Nyck de Vries, got Nyck de Vries, and then almost immediately decided, nah, Nyck de Vries ain't it. Should it really be Nyck de Vries that gets fired? But then you start doing a bit more digging and you look at who is currently in the Red Bull Junior lineup. Jack Crawford, Enzo Fittipaldi, Isaac Hadjar, Dennis Hauger, Ayumu Iwasa, and Zane Maloney. As well as this, you've got Liam Lawson, who is fully expected to be the next guy that Red Bull brings up into Formula 1. So why not replace de Vries with Lawson? He finished 3rd in Formula 2 last season, so he would have got the amount of super license points as per the Verstappen rule. It's a legitimate question to ask. And as it currently stands, Lawson is 2nd in Super Formula, and Red Bull will want to have him finish that and get developed first before dropping him in. But then people will say, why didn't they bring him in for the season anyway? After all, he has got the super license points. The fact Gasly didn't sign for Alpine until the December of 2022 might have had something to do with that. Maybe Lawson had everything in place to go to Japan, by which time it might have been too much hassle to keep him in Europe. Lawson was on the list of rumoured drivers to replace de Vries when all of this started, but he came out saying that he was fully committed to winning Super Formula and going from there. There's also stuff posted by a Stan account that was actually interesting beyond the usual stat padding and, oh my god, my driver breathed this morning, what a badass stuff. You've got the fact that Ricciardo is very popular, profitable, and marketable. I don't think anybody has anything bad to say about him as a person, even if his performances at McLaren in 2022 were awful versus Norris. Ricciardo has the experience needed to improve things at Alpha Tauri. You've got the already established point that Lawson is competitive in Super Formula right now and wants to see out the rest of the season, instead of interrupting his development, especially with how bad the Alpha Tauri is this season. It also allows for Ricciardo to get up to speed in Formula 1 if Red Bull decides it needs to offload Perez. Red Bull is considering the possibility that Yuki might be off to Aston Martin in 2026 as part of their Honda deal, so are covering their backs with Ricciardo to send him back up to the senior team. But overall, Red Bull as an operation might be looking at Alpha Tauri and selling, as there are rumours currently going around. Red Bull doesn't have a Vettel or Verstappen-like star in the making, and now their junior team is going to be filled with a 34-year-old who's just gone around the block in terms of driving for F1 teams and back where he started. And you've also got a driver who would someone say is there because he's the best of what they've got, plus fits the whole, oh yeah, Honda thing. So by bringing Ricciardo back, it seems that Red Bull has all of its bases covered, which we'll just recap. Number 1, covers Red Bull if they need to dump Perez, as they've got nobody else right now that can step up. Number 2, it allows Lawson to develop in Super Formula for next year or 2025. Number 3, it covers the Red Bull group if this rumoured buyer is found. Number 4, has a marketable and popular driver that can also be the team leader with his experience. And number 5, it allows Lawson to come in if Yuki goes to Aston Martin. But this is what we've come to expect from Red Bull. I mean, to be fair to them, they took a punt on De Vries when nobody else would, off the back of that one performance in a Williams. De Vries was at Mercedes and they didn't do anything with him, and gave a 28-year-old a low-risk gamble in the worst performing car this season. Because, as already mentioned, Red Bull doesn't have that up-and-comer like it once had in Vettel, Verstappen, or even Ricciardo for that matter. However, this is probably because Red Bull is distancing itself from its other team more and more. It's now a sister team rather than a feeder team. But to dump a guy after 10 races of the season still seems a little bit odd. By doing what they've done, you might think, well, they should have just put Ricciardo in from the start of the season if this was going to be the case. But the speculation surrounding De Vries being good enough started within a couple of races. As Scott Mitchell reminds everybody, rookies have struggled over a season, especially in this modern era of very little on-track testing and everything being done in a simulator. As viewers are quick to remind sim racing YouTubers, racing in real life, racing in a simulator, not the same thing. Jacques Villeneuve was probably the best prepared rookie in Formula 1 history. Williams gave him the 1995 car and he went to Silverstone, Monza and Estoril and turned God knows how many laps. Compare that to compatriot Lance Stroll in 2017, he got 6 days at Barcelona. Compare that to Mick Schumacher in 2021, 3 days in Bahrain. And Mick struggled in his first season. His car was awful, but everybody was all, oh, it's okay, Mick, you'll be fine, keep pushing, you're just like your dad. But for De Vries, it's a reaction akin to Sean Locke roasting the children of Mitchellbrook Primary School. Link in the description, that's a very British reference. And when you see the instant impact of someone like Verstappen or how Leclerc and Russell were able to impress in inferior equipment, it seems that now everybody has to be like Verstappen, on it, immediately. I mean, Formula 1 is a results game. It's just like how a football manager gets sacked if the team loses a chunk of games a season. But the difference here is you've got De Vries in a rubbish car with a teammate who only has 2 points in that same rubbish car. It's like, how do you compare it? I don't know, like the Luton Town manager being sacked midway through next season because they lost to Manchester City. If Manchester City lost 4 games in a row to Everton, Leeds, Norwich and Luton, then they'd be quite rightly calling for Pep Guardiola to be sacked, which is kind of like the Perez situation. Underachieving at the top team and the best car is probably worse than underachieving in a car that's rubbish. And for the Colonials, Man City are the New England Patriots and Luton are last season's Chicago Bears or something like that. So with that said, Ricciardo is going to have to come in and at least match Tsunoda right off the bat in Hungary. By the time the end of the season rolls around, he's going to have to be destroying Tsunoda, which will then make Red Bull take notice and start looking at Checo, who in turn will start sweating more than he was in that driver briefing when he had that illness. And if Ricciardo doesn't, then it's probably F1 career over. So this is where things get handed over to you so that you can have a discussion in the comments. To use the terms used by Scott Mitchell at the race, is Red Bull treating its family wrong, and is all this a mess of Red Bull's doing that is much bigger than just De Vries bad? Leave any comments down in the designated comment disposal area and get a discussion going. And while scrolling down, like the video if I've done a good job with making some points, and for more like this, subscribe and get the bell on so you never miss out from anything I do around here. Massive thanks to the kind folk at Patreon for the continued support, and if you want to help support me at a more personal level, you can do so by heading to the link in the description, where there's also a link to Discord, socials, and the F1 store, where if you buy anything I get a kickback. Well, there's super thanks too if you just want to buy me a beer or buy me a coffee. So until next time, I've been Millward, have a great day wherever you are, and goodbye.